What would you do if you woke up alone in the world? Everyone around you, even your parents, were infected with a deadly virus. Just a few days ago, Ish climbed a mountain and was accidentally bitten by a snake. After discovering that it was a highly venomous snake, Ish tried to hold back the pain to call for help, but the feeling of paralysis quickly spread throughout his body, causing him to drop his phone. Ish immediately pulled out a small knife to cut the wound where he was bitten, then tried to suck out the poison without having time to pick up his phone. Ish staggered home. Then Ish panicked and drank a bottle of wine before falling onto the bed. Ish reminded himself not to forget to breathe, but his heart beat faster and faster. Ish quickly passed out, but his body kept convulsing. The next day, Ish woke up and found that his palm was swollen like a dumpling, but luckily he was still alive. Night fell in Ish's dream, feeling like someone came to find him, but when they saw his physical condition, they not only did not save him, but also quickly left. Ish only vaguely heard a strange sentence. "He's sick. Let's go." The sun still rose as usual. Ish vaguely saw a few helicopters flying by. Realizing that something had happened, Ish still could not stand up. At this time, the mother who had not contacted Ish for a long time suddenly sent a message as a farewell, but Ish could not read it at all. At that time, Ish was still fighting the poison. Fortunately, Ish finally woke up from his coma. Because he was so hungry and thirsty, Ish tried to reach for a bottle of water to drink, but he found that the water in the bottle was empty. Ish could only try to leave the house to buy water. Because he did not have a phone, Ish did not know how many days had passed. Ish only knew that he was not killed by the poison. The wound on Ish's hand had also healed. Stepping out, Ish was surprised to find the car covered in dust. Ish wondered how long he had been unconscious, but Ish didn't have time to think too much. Ish cleaned up roughly and drove straight to town, but as soon as he reached the edge of town, he realized something was wrong. The usually bustling street was now deserted. Arriving at the supermarket, Ish discovered goods scattered all over the street, as if someone had not had time to take them away. After seeing the body lying on the ground, Ish immediately felt that something was wrong. From the condition of the body and the flies flying around, it was clear that this person had died a long time ago. Although he did not know what had happened, looking at the tragic scene around, something big must have happened here. At this time, Ish saw the warning on the sign. Ish no longer had the mind to think any further and immediately drove to his parents' house. Through the radio, Ish learned that he had been in a coma for 3 weeks. During this time, a virus broke out in the world that was not only extremely contagious, but also had a very high mortality rate. Moreover, the virus quickly spread throughout the world. Ish could not believe it and returned home. Ish could only pray that his parents would be okay. But when Ish entered the bedroom, the tragic image of his father pulled him back to reality. Looking at his father who was no longer breathing, Ish choked up and cried out loud. Unable to bear to see this scene, Ish turned around and walked into the bathroom, only to find that his mother had also collapsed next to the toilet. The sudden shock caused Ish to be in extreme pain. After calming down, Ish buried his parents in their favorite garden. Since childhood, Ish had liked to live alone, but now he felt the fear of silence. Ish hoped to find survivors like himself, so Ish started searching all over town, but what disappointed him was that everywhere was filled with corpses. Unable to accept this fact, Ish decided to go to the big city and go to the supermarket to get some necessities. However, Ish was not happy with this free purchase. Ish continued walking on the main road, but when Ish was about to cross the bridge, he found that the front was blocked. Looking at the bodies lying on the ground, Ish screamed in despair. Ish slapped himself hard in the face to prove that everything before his eyes was just a dream. But the painful feeling told Ish that the end of the world had really come. Ish believed that there were still survivors, so Ish continued to go to the city center to search. But the despair was that the city center, which was once bustling and crowded with vehicles, had now become extremely quiet. Although the backup power source was still maintaining the operation of the entire city, the beautiful scenery became strange in this silence. Ish angrily shouted, "Where is everyone?" The only response to Ish was absolute silence. After a while of searching without results, Ish resigned himself to lying in the high-class hot tub and thinking about what to do next. Then Ish began to wander aimlessly. Arriving at the bar, Ish poured himself a glass of the most expensive foreign wine, but just as Ish was about to drink, a voice suddenly said, "Pour me a glass." The sudden appearance of the voice startled Ish. 2 survivors appeared in front of Ish. Through the news that these 2 people recorded, Ish also understood why the apocalypse happened. It turned out that when the virus first broke out, the government took immediate action, but the vaccine research was ineffective. But the government claimed that they had achieved a breakthrough and hid the truth from the public. Then the government secretly buried those who died from the infection and ignored the virus's ability to infect. When people realized it, it was too late. The virus spread rapidly, and this led to the current massacre. The world seemed to have reached the end of the world. Fortunately, Jin and Tom survived. Tom believed that the survivors were immune to the virus, but no matter what, the survivors have nowhere to go. The remaining time is better to stay here drinking and having fun. But Ish does not agree with Jin and Tom's opinion. Ish wants to calm down. But when looking at his image in the mirror, Ish does not know what to do. Because of being drunk, Ish falls asleep in the corridor. When he wakes up, Ish starts looking for Jin and Tom that he met last night because he is afraid that it is just an illusion. Luckily, Ish finds Jin in the changing changing room, but Ish realizes that Jin seems to have lost all hope of living. Ish is confused and asks, "Is it not important to survive?" Jin says that a beating heart does not mean you are alive. Tom carefully prepares breakfast, and then the three happily eat breakfast together. But when he knows that Ish is about to leave, Jin suddenly goes out sadly. Seeing this, Tom tries to hold Ish back and explains that he can be the motivation for Jin to live on. Because Tom and Jin had said before that when the food here runs out, they will end their lives. Ish said that the outside world is very big and the resources are enough to live for 10 years. But Tom said, when you lose your loved ones, there is no hope of living anymore. Everyone on Earth is dead, so what is the meaning of living? After Tom finished speaking, he stood up and left. Ish went to Jin, who was crying, and said that he could take Jin with him, but Jin just smiled and refused Ish. Ish then had to leave the building alone. As soon as he left the building, Ish heard 2 gunshots, and then the whole world became quiet again. Ish finally, completely collapsed. Ish immediately pressed the car's accelerator to the maximum and planned to end his life that way. But the appearance of a small dog made Ish change his mind. Seeing the dog also survive like him made Ish regain his faith to continue living. Ish happily names the dog Lucky and takes him to the car. With nothing else to pursue, Ish decides to return to where it all began. Along with that, Ish brought luck. First, Ish went to the town library and collected all the books related to survival. Then Ish returned to the house that made him feel warm. A man and a dog started a new life. But the lonely days eventually got boring. A year passed in a flash. Ish kept repeating the actions of the previous day. When bored, Ish would drive around, but Ish was about to lose his temper. The usually quiet Luck suddenly barked loudly. Ish looked in the direction where Luck was barking and saw white smoke rising. Although the distance was not too far, Ish still drove for a long time. Everyone knew that in the apocalypse, a good weapon was needed. However, Ish only brought a small, compact hammer. After discovering that it was just a woman, Ish began to let down his guard. Emma led Ish into the house. Through conversation, Ish learned that Emma was always looking for her kind, but unfortunately she had been searching for a year without finding anyone. Emma had just arrived recently and was not yet used to the environment when she unexpectedly met Ish. After listening to Emma's story, Ish suggested that she move in with him. That way, the two could take care of each other. It sounded reasonable, so Emma agreed. The next morning, Emma brought all her belongings and decided to move in with Ish. This town was where Ish grew up, so he was very familiar with every corner. Finally, the two of them arrived at Ish's old house. The neat room made Emma extremely happy. Then Emma and Ish checked the remaining survival supplies, but the food in the refrigerator had long expired. Ish took Emma to the town's supermarket, which could meet all the necessities. Ish only focused on getting food, while Emma carefully looked for some medicine. It was worth mentioning that the corpses in the supermarket still seemed to have not completely decomposed. Even though it had been a year, the stench was still strong. At this time, Ish excitedly said that he had discovered something new. It turned out that there were still solar panels in the supermarket. Emma joked that it was better to move here because she felt that the supermarket was built for the apocalypse. When they went outside, Ish said that he would take the solar panels away later because the world no longer had water and electricity. That evening, Ish had his first delicious meal with Emma and discussed this disaster. Based on current observations, it seemed that all humans in the world had died, but animals other than humans were still alive. Since there was no longer any noise disturbance, some animals had even run out into the streets. Ish said that Ish and Emma might be like these animals. There were special immune molecules in their genes. Thinking about the fact that Ish had been bitten by a poisonous snake before, perhaps this was the reason why Ish survived. In the following days, Emma and Ish lived a peaceful life. Ish began to research how to install solar panels. Occasionally, Ish went to the riverbank to fish to improve his meals. Not long after, the roof project was finally completed. Emma also grew vegetables in the yard. As time passed, Emma and Ish's relationship became closer and closer. Love began to grow between Emma and Ish. After a sweet night together, Emma and Ish officially became a couple. The next day, Emma and Ish happily looked forward, like a couple immersed in love. Time passed quickly. Half a year later, that day Emma excitedly announced the good news. It turned out that Emma was pregnant with Ish's child. Hearing this news, Ish was not only unhappy, but his expression became serious. There was no hospital, no doctor, and no emergency equipment here. The feeling of helplessness made Ish extremely miserable. Ish was worried that if something unfortunate happened to Emma, Ish would be the only one left. If Ish was the only one left, he would be more miserable than dead. Ish had already lost his parents whom he loved the most. Of course, Ish did not want to lose any more relatives. Emma said that only continuing to live was the motivation to continue living. Ish and Emma must find a way to give birth. After discussing, Ish and Emma decided to go to the town library and find some books on giving birth. Fortunately, Ish used to be a geologist. Ish's learning ability was enough to understand the knowledge in the books. Then, Ish and Emma looked for some supplies for giving birth. Ish and Emma had to carefully prepare every detail because giving birth without a doctor was very dangerous. Soon Emma's belly grew bigger and bigger. The food in the house was not enough to meet Emma's nutritional needs. The menu now needed to include at least some meat, which would help the pregnant woman's body reach its best condition. Ish was smart and quickly thought of a way. Ish took took a small axe to a nearby farm and then found a herd of cows grazing. Since this was the first time hunting animals at close range, Ish mustered up all his courage to pull the trigger. Then Ish had to process and dismember the cow's carcass. But facing a large cow, Ish did not know where to start. Fortunately, Ish brought a step-by-step guide to dissecting cattle. When Ish returned home, Emma praised Ish's efforts. Emma once again witnessed Ish's growth. However, Ish could not have imagined that this hunt would lead to a disaster. The next day, Ish also finished installing the solar power he had been researching for half a year. Ish successfully started the refrigerator in the house. At this time, Emma discovered traces of rats in the kitchen, but these rats were larger than usual. Thinking of the cow that Ish had just slaughtered, he realized that the rats had smelled the beef. That night, the whole town was filled with murmuring noises. It seemed that some force was coming here. Very quickly, the sound of dogs barking echoed outside the window. Ish immediately witnessed a horrifying scene. He only saw rats everywhere outside, but the direction the rats were heading towards was Ish and Emma's house. Without hesitation, Ish and Emma burned all the rice and food in the house. Of course, they also burned the uneaten beef. Emma intended to use a hunting rifle to chase away the approaching rats, but this method was completely ineffective. When more and more rats appeared, Ish and Emma had to run into the house. Ish used tape to cover the windows, at least temporarily blocking the dense attack of rats. At this time, outside, the miserable sound of dogs was heard. It turned out that they had forgotten about Lucky outside. Ish reluctantly tore off the tape and rushed out to save Lucky. In the few seconds that the door was open, dozens of large rats rushed straight into the house. Next, Ish swung his stick and hit them in all directions. Ish and Emma barely made it through the night. Early the next morning, the rats outside had retreated, but the streets had now become a cat paradise. It seemed that the basic ecosystem was still stable. Ish's tense nerves were finally relaxed. A few months later, Emma finally gave birth. But this time, fate was not joking. The baby's arm was stuck in the pelvis. If the baby's position was not adjusted in time, both Emma and the baby would be in serious danger. Ish, who was midwife for the first time, was extremely nervous. Ish could only follow the instructions in the book. Ish boldly put his hand in to adjust the baby's position. After tireless efforts, the first post-apocalyptic human was finally born. The happiness after so many hardships made Ish and Emma satisfied. But Ish and Emma were still worried about the future. Emma then left a note in the town center with the exact address where Ish and Emma were living. Little did Emma know that this was a foolish move and would bring disaster to Emma and Ish in the future. Soon, an uninvited guest appeared in town. That person immediately saw the note Emma left behind. Time passed and the pandemic lasted for the 6th year. That day, Ish was collecting food and returning home when he accidentally hit something on the road. When he got out of the car to check, Ish was shocked and panicked. An American lion was lying on the ground. Pay attention, this lion is a sign and it will appear in the following events. Looking at the lion that seemed to be about to die, Ish with kindness ended the lion's suffering. At this moment, a noise was heard nearby. When Ish looked up, he discovered a strange girl. Seeing this, Ish did not think twice and immediately chased her because after all, this was the first survivor Ish had met in many years. The girl was quickly forced to stop. The girl did not say anything, but just stared at Ish as if afraid that he would point a gun at her the next second. To make her less wary, Ish kept his distance and said that he had no ill intentions. Ish offered to provide food and shelter. Perhaps the girl had experienced something scary because in the end, she still refused ISJ's offer and turned away. Ish disappointedly followed the old path back to his car, but Ish discovered that the lion on the ground had disappeared, which made Ish feel strange. Could it be that the lion's body had been taken away by another animal? Returning to the car, Ish cautiously observed the surroundings. Ish could not help but worry about the girl's safety. Luckily at this moment, the girl came out of the forest. Ish quickly threw her an apple. In a post-apocalyptic world, nothing is more precious than food. This action seemed to have made the girl lower her guard. The girl didn't say anything, but climbed into the back of the car, secretly accepting Ish's help. When they got home, Emma was teaching her 2 mischievous children. It seemed that Emma and Ish had given birth to another child over the years. Looking at Emma's bulging belly, it was easy to guess that Ish's 3rd child was about to be born. At this time, the girl hiding in the car still refused to come down. Her expression became as alert as before. Ish said that he understood her mood and began to gently introduce his family. Then, Ish said that the girl could stay in the car to observe more. Returning to the room, Ish recounted the whole incident today. Ish thought that the girl must have gone through something very scary. The girl looked like she was suffering from a stress disorder. This answer received George's agreement. George was a survivor who came to town a few years ago. During the conversation, George's wife, Maureen, walked in. Maureen asked where the girl in question was now. Maureen received the answer that the girl was still in the pickup truck. By evening, the girl was still curled up and refused to get out of the truck. Seeing that, everyone had no choice but to sit next to the truck to accompany the girl until late at night. The next day, Maureen brought some food to comfort the girl, but unexpectedly, the girl's reaction was extremely violent. At that moment, the girl's arm accidentally revealed a burn scar that looked like she had been abused. Maureen understood and showed the girl the scar on her chest. Maureen said that she had also experienced the same thing, so Maureen Maureen understood the girl's fear and anxiety. Under Maureen's patient comfort, the girl finally accepted this new environment. Then Maureen led the girl into a room and prepared a hot tub for her to bathe. At that moment, Maureen opened the backpack that the girl was carrying. Maureen wanted to find out information about the girl. The first notebook taken out looked very strange. The extremely strange content inside immediately made Maureen shiver. At the same time, Ish and George returned to the forest that Ish had passed through before. Ish was cautious to clarify the girl's identity, based on the fact that this place was quite far from town and the girl's health condition at that time. Ish thought that the girl must be nearby. Sure enough, Ish and George quickly discovered a wooden house hidden deep in the forest. Inside, there were indeed traces of people who had lived there. Seeing the creepy paintings all over the walls, Ish and George did not stay long and quickly left the forest. That night, Maureen told everyone what she had discovered. Maureen also found a letter in the backpack. The writer claimed to be the girl's mother. The mother said that her daughter's name was Ivy. Ivy's family was originally very happy, but after the apocalypse, Ivy's father became extremely cruel and even took his anger out on his daughter. Ivy's mother also said that she was dying and could no longer protect Ivy. She hoped that whoever read this letter would treat Ivy well. After hearing Maureen's words, everyone present could not help but be moved. A few months later, Ish's third child was finally born. This time it was a boy. Ish named his son Joey. What is being said is that Emma's genes were very strong, so all three children had dark skin. Time passed, and soon a year had passed. Little Joey had become extremely adorable. Joey's birth brought joy to everyone. However, the peaceful life was still broken when the alarm system around the house suddenly activated. Everyone realized that a stranger had entered their territory. Ish quickly told Maureen to take the children to the hiding room, while Ish and the others would take weapons to check. Ish suspected that Ivy's family had followed them here because this was the biggest possibility he could think of. A moment later, Emma saw a figure passing by, but when Emma aimed the gun, she was scolded. Looking closely, three people appeared in front. The woman in the lead asked Emma not to act rashly. After explaining, it turned out that the group of strangers had a lost boy and accidentally activated Ish's warning system. At that moment, a boy ran from behind. It was clear that the group of strangers were not lying. After confronting both sides, it was determined that neither side had any ill intentions, so Ish invited them into his yard. Everyone knows that the scariest thing in the apocalypse is people's hearts, so Ish needed to make sure that the people who came here had no ill intentions. The woman sitting in front was named Molly. Molly said that she used to be a surgeon in Washington. After the apocalypse struck, the people around Molly gradually disappeared, so she reluctantly left the city. Then Molly met a couple sitting in the back. The boy was also their son. The reason Molly's group was able to find this place was because they saw the directions in the center of town. After listening to the other party's explanation, Ish still did not express his opinion because Ish was no longer the man who had been there the first year. Ish had to find a way to ensure the safety of everyone here. Molly cleverly asked if they could live here. Emma enthusiastically quickly said that there was an empty house next door. After Molly and the others left, Ish complained that the instructions that Emma had left behind should be deleted. Because it had been 7 years, the instructions were still attracting new survivors to come here. The next morning, Ish held a short meeting with everyone. There were currently a total of 7 adults and 5 children in the compound. Therefore, they had to go to town to collect more supplies. After all, the increased number of people would definitely require more supplies. Emma stayed home to take care of the children. The remaining 6 people split into groups to take action. The things to look for include canned food, solar panels, and some expired toiletries. They also haven't been to town for half a year. Seth saw that there were a lot of wild animals roaming around these days, so everyone needed to be on guard. A moment later, the group drove 3 cars to the designated location. A buffalo suddenly appeared there. Ish explained that this buffalo was always there. This buffalo wouldn't harm anyone. It would just stand there. Everyone just laughed and didn't think much of it. Then they split up to search the surrounding stores. Ish led a man into a convenience store. Even though it had been 7 years, there were still some items that could be used. At the same time, Molly chose to act alone. Molly quietly went to a nearby hospital and began to search every corner thoroughly. Molly knew very well that medical supplies were more important than food. Unfortunately, most of the rooms were empty because Ish had searched the place before. At this time, Molly discovered a room with a locked door. Molly immediately guessed that this must be the medicine room. Just then, a little wolf came out, and the atmosphere immediately became extremely tense. Molly remained calm and did not panic. Then, Molly carefully groped for a fire extinguisher. Molly quickly opened it to chase away the little wolf in front of her. Leaving the hospital, Molly returned with a large bag full of medicine. Ish saw this and immediately ran over. Ish was a little angry at Molly's actions because she did not follow the instructions to collect supplies. But when he learned that Molly brought back medicine, Ish could not help but be surprised. Because how could she collect so much? Because Ish and George had been there before. Molly explained that every hospital had a spare medicine room to prevent theft or robbery. Seeing the situation, Ish praised Molly's intelligence. In the apocalypse, apocalypse, everyone had their own special abilities. That night, everyone sat together, talking and laughing happily. This happy atmosphere was unlike the apocalypse. Perhaps because they had all experienced the pain of loss, they cherished the present moment. Time passed quickly. Many years passed, and during that time, Maureen gave birth to a child, which moved George. George not only felt lucky to be a father again, but also very grateful to have a friend like Ish. In addition, Molly's friend also gave birth to a child. Currently, this large family had a total of 14 people, 7 adults and 7 children. Over time, Ish's dog named Lucky grew older and weaker. In a flash, it had been 14 years since the outbreak of the pandemic. At this time, some children were almost as big as adults, and on the faces of the adults, the marks of time were clearly visible. Although the survivors were all favored by fate, aging never spared them. That day, Ish took his youngest son Joey to the library. Ish taught Joey about the world. Joey, who was smart, studied every single piece of knowledge attentively. Soon, Ish and his son heard thunder outside the window. It turned out that the annual storm had arrived. When Ish drove home, the rain had become more intense. When he got to his room, Ish suddenly realized that Lucky had disappeared, so he rushed out to look for Lucky. After searching every corner of the house, Ish still had to witness a scene he did not want to see. Lucky had been crushed to death by a large tree. Lucky was like a relative and had accompanied Ish for 14 years. He did not expect Lucky to end his life this way, perhaps because of the lack of Lucky's companionship. From then on, Ish had lost Lucky forever. The next day, while Ish was watching his young son play, a lion suddenly jumped out from the bushes nearby. Seeing that his son was about to face danger, Ish quickly jumped up and stood in front. The lion rushed forward to bite Ish's car. Each attack was so intense that Ish did not have time to breathe. Ish tried to grab the hammer that had just fallen, but the lion's terrible strength almost exhausted Ish. In just a few seconds, Ish completely lost consciousness. Ivy, who was standing next to him, kept calling for help, but no matter how much Ivy screamed, it was of no help to Ish. Fortunately, Ivy was able to call for help in time, thanks to which Ish was able to escape the fate of being attacked by a wild animal. But in an era of limited medical conditions, relying on a surgeon who had not touched a scalpel for 14 years was very difficult. The adults all stood around the hospital bed, fumbling to stabilize Ish's body. After Dr. Molly stopped the initial bleeding for Ish, Molly performed artificial respiration on Ish, but the results were not good. At this time, someone brought in a rudimentary oxygen device. This device finally helped Ish regain his breathing. After passing the dangerous stage, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Molly treated Ish's wound and then stitched it. Molly couldn't hold back her tears. Emma was heartbroken for Ish, so she took a gun to avenge her husband. Emma held the gun in her hand and followed the blood trail into the forest. Soon she discovered the lion hiding. Emma kept shooting at it to vent her anger. Not long after Ish woke up, Molly also breathed a sigh of relief. After examining Ish's wound, Molly admitted that she had hidden it from everyone. In fact, Molly was only a medical student for a year. Molly didn't have any practical experience. Molly deeply regretted hiding this, but Ish comforted Molly in return. At least this time, Molly had successfully saved her patient's life. 6 weeks later, Ish was able to get out of bed and walk. In the next 3 years, the children gradually grew up. Joey was passionate about diving and caught a lot of lobsters. Ish couldn't help but worry about Joey's safety, so he told Joey to be accompanied by an adult next time. But Ish forgot that the children were already grown up. Ish's daughter, Heather, and her childhood friend, Ralph, couldn't hide their feelings for each other while exploring an abandoned house. Heather and Ralph understood each other's feelings and decided to explore the outside world together. When Ish heard that his daughter was leaving, Ish couldn't accept it. But in the end, Ish was still convinced by Emma. Adults are getting older and only want a peaceful life. The future belongs to the children, so Ish had to hold back his pain and let go so that the 2 young people could explore their future. The next day, the whole family reluctantly said goodbye to Heather and Ralph. Emma gave Heather a hunting rifle for self-defense, and Ish said goodbye to her children. Ish thought the rest of their lives would pass peacefully, but suddenly there was a problem with the water supply in the house. While Ivy was getting water, she discovered that the water pipe had stopped flowing. Even though she tried so hard to turn it on that it broke the tap, the water still wouldn't flow. So Ish and the others went to the water station to check. The pipe was severely corroded and had a big hole in it. While everyone was feeling helpless, Joey suddenly pointed to a convoy approaching from afar. Joey excitedly said that someone had come to help them. After many years, Ish saw a group of strangers again. Ish was extremely cautious because he didn't know if they were friends or enemies. Ish quickly drove home to warn them. Emma calmed down and advised Ish to stay calm. This could also be a good thing, but Ish thought that they should always be vigilant. When the convoy arrived, Ish stood behind the closed gate and held a gun to confront the group of strangers. Charlie, the leader, took out the remaining bottle of water to try to make the atmosphere tense. After drinking water, Ish finally lowered his guard and chatted with the other party. Charlie said that he saw that the drought was coming, so he came to survey the reservoir. But Charlie saw that the situation was not very optimistic. Fortunately, Charlie's group brought well drilling technology. If Ish accepted Charlie's group, both sides would get through these difficult days together. After the two sides introduced themselves, Emma took the initiative to invite Charlie's group to join their big family. Then, Ish treated Charlie's group very generously. Ish used his professional knowledge to inform Charlie about the geological situation here. Charlie also quickly came up with a countermeasure. Charlie planned to bring a drill and some equipment to drill a well. It was expected that everyone would have fresh water within 72 hours. Ish also needed to provide Charlie's group with food and accommodation. The two sides quickly reached an agreement. Charlie's well drilling work was carried out in Ish's garden. At Charlie's invitation, Ish tried to install the machine, but because he was too clumsy, he gave up. Charlie then consoled Ish that each person had their own strengths. Then Charlie took Ish hunting. Ish was the first to spot a deer, but unexpectedly, Charlie was behind and shot first. Charlie's shooting was so fast and accurate that Ish realized the threat. At the campfire party that night, Charlie talked to the children about his scars. He said that scars were God's mathematics, that God kept records of how much punishment and mercy humans could endure. These words awakened Ivy's buried memories. Ivy looked at Charlie intently. Charlie and his girlfriend also noticed the abnormality. There was an undercurrent between them. That night, only Ish and Charlie were left to watch the campfire. Charlie expressed his interest in Ish. Ish was always a bit wary of Charlie, so Ish did not want his son to be close to Charlie. The eldest son, Alex, had his own thoughts. Alex thought that his father was always biased towards his younger brother Joey, and that whatever Alex wanted to do was controlled. Then Alex turned around and left without looking back. Emma realized the conflict between father and son, so she took the initiative to ask about the situation. Only then did Ish say that he was full of doubts about Charlie's group. Charlie even confessed to him. Emma laughed again because of Ish's serious expression. Emma also gave an example that Ish had initially opposed Molly's appearance, but in the end, Molly saved Ish's life. However, Ish stubbornly said that this time the feeling of unease was stronger than before. Ish was in a gloomy mood and had to go to the well drilling area to observe. Charlie's group installed the last drill bit. Everyone watched anxiously. Fortunately, this time there was finally a ray of hope. The well drilling pulled up a lot of slate pieces, and the slate had many holes, so water could seep through them. However, Ish was still a bit worried. Ish looked at everyone with a complicated mood. Ish began to reflect on himself. Then Ish climbed a mountain alone, deciding to organize his thoughts. But Ish found out he was lost. At night, when Charlie went out to smoke, he found Jenny sitting alone, absent-minded. Charlie did not hesitate to share his cigarettes. It turned out that Charlie was also a fan of Jenny's music. Then Charlie shared a bottle of wine that he kept, but Jenny refused because Jenny had quit drinking a long time ago. Charlie still did not give up and continued to invite. It was not until someone came out that Charlie kept his distance from Jenny. At this time, Emma suddenly realized that Ish had left for a long time without returning. Because of worry, Emma decided to go out to look for him, but Ish slowly walked in. After greeting the family, Ish hurried to the fireplace. At this time, Emma was very angry because she did not understand why Ish was so reckless. The next day, when the well drilling continued, Charlie suddenly ordered a stop. Then a stream of muddy water gushed out from the ground. When the water gradually became clear, it gushed out. Ish ran over to see this joyful scene. Ish finally let go of the worry in his heart. Ish took the initiative to pat Charlie's shoulder, indicating that Charlie could take whatever he needed. But Charlie said that he loved this place more than he imagined, so Charlie decided to stay. Ish turned around and left with a complicated mood. Ish looked at the team that had always revolved around him and now shouted Charlie's name. Ish was filled with conflict. Ish's actions led everyone to think that maybe he was jealous and always targeted Charlie. For a moment, Ish also fell into self-doubt. However, the incident that happened that evening made Ish realize that he did not wrongly when accused Charlie. Charlie had forced Ivy to have sex with Charlie. Ivy cried and trembled. Everyone suddenly did not know what to do. Maureen was heartbroken to the point of tears when she saw that scene, because Maureen had always considered Ivy as her own daughter. Charlie was a predator. Charlie roamed everywhere looking for new prey. They were always great prey for Charlie. Charlie found pleasure in hunting the weak. Emma now realized that she had been too kind. Emma had misunderstood her husband and thought that Ish was too suspicious. Jenny also remembered and couldn't help but feel scared. Jenny almost fell into Charlie's trap, so Jenny proactively proposed to expel Charlie's group. But everyone also knew that expulsion could not control the actions of the living unless a prison was built to imprison Charlie, but that would destroy the original intention of the house. Finally, Emma came up with a plan to eliminate Charlie. At first, first, some people objected to this, but thinking about the possibility of their children becoming Charlie's victims, everyone could only silently agree. Although they knew that this might go against their original ideals, for their own benefit, they chose to kill people. After the plan was implemented, Ish woke Charlie up. Ish took a hammer and confronted Charlie. Seeing this, Charlie immediately pulled out a dagger without hiding his rudeness. Charlie believed that in times of chaos, the benevolent should be killed first. Charlie used this to mock Ish's weakness. When he learned that Ish wanted to chase him away, Charlie sighed. The only way Charlie could leave was to go with Ish's wife. Charlie considered Ish weak and he would become a sacrifice. Charlie declared that he would take over his family in Ish's place. Charlie confidently asserted that he would set an example for Ish's 2 sons. Ish was completely enraged, and the others also stepped out. Charlie was overwhelmed by everyone's presence. Ish suddenly attacked and used the hammer to hit Charlie hard. Charlie was stunned and had no strength to fight back. Ish went crazy and hit Charlie's head until everyone stopped him. Only then did Ish realize he had killed people. Because of that, Ish fell into endless guilt. Ish used the water Charlie drilled to wash away the remaining blood on his hands. For a moment, Ish only felt heavy guilt. Night fell, but Ish still did not stop scrubbing. Ish could not overcome the torment in his heart. It was not until his son was awakened and came to find him that Ish gradually calmed down. After Charlie's body was secretly handled, the issue of whether Charlie's group would stay or go needed to be discussed further. First was Puri, who was closest to Charlie. After knowing that her boyfriend had died, Puri quickly accepted this fact. Puri was forced to stay with Charlie, so Puri also hated Charlie. However, the other members were not easy to control. Ish's group waited for Charlie's group members to gather in the yard, then surrounded them with guns and forced them to make a choice to stay and live here or leave. Because Peter supported Charlie, Peter could only drive away indignantly in the face of threats. Early in the morning, Alex went looking for Charlie's figure because he could not accept the fact that his idol was gone. At this time, Peter drove away in a pickup truck and suddenly returned. Peter realized that he could not survive alone, so he begged to stay here. However, when Charlie harmed Ivy, Peter just stood at the door and did nothing. In order to protect his family, Ish firmly refused to accept Peter. Thanks to Ish's determination, everyone passed the next 3 years safely. Joey revealed his incredible creativity. Ish built a workshop for Joey to make his small inventions. Alex, who was forgotten, could only watch his younger brother Joey surrounded by everyone. Ish was completely unaware of this and kept praising his youngest son Joey. That night, Joey had a slight fever, but Ish thought it was just a common cold, so he gave Joey cold medicine. Unexpectedly, Joey fell in pain and fell in front of his parents' room that night. Ish rushed to Molly, but Ish found Molly busy taking care of a patient. Molly said that the same virus had appeared 20 years ago. The initial symptoms were shaking and pain all over the body, followed by a high fever. Finally, complete loss of consciousness. When Molly knew that Joey was also infected with this disease, Molly immediately reminded Ish to transfer Joey to the hospital because this disease was extremely contagious. Then Molly asked healthy people to wear masks and stay home to isolate. While Molly and Ish were talking, another patient came in. After hearing the news, Emma had to go to Maureen for help. Ivy, after knowing the story, also took the initiative to follow. When Emma's group arrived at the hospital, there were many patients lying on the bed. The patients could only use ice to reduce fever. Ish did not listen to Molly's advice and stayed home to take care of Joey. At this time, Heather, who had been away for 3 years, suddenly returned home. After that, Heather hugged her parents and sadly told the story. Her lover, Ralph, had passed away. Heather realized that being with her parents was the safest. After that, Heather took the initiative to take care of Joey's younger brother. This made Ish decide to do something for his children. Ish drove his bike to a hospital further away. Ish quickly looked for medicine, but Charlie's image kept appearing in Ish's mind, making him extremely scared. Ish even thought that his most beloved child being infected with this deadly virus was also retribution for his murder. We have gone through part 1 of the movie together. If you find it interesting, please follow us to welcome the next parts.